and Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to the listeners, and to Commander to Happy New Year. Governor, yes, I mean, Bawku it was not as it is now, because I'll say by and large, we went from Bolga in 1983 to Bawku, somewhere April 1983. The conflict had not really reached the conflict of Ghana. I'll say that our first experience of conflict in Bawku as a child was in 1984. And that was after 1 year of being there. And so it just started with this bow and arrows. Really, and when you even had a gun, it was just this funeral type of performing gun, not actually what we now have on witness. And I'll say that I'm speaking on this because I'm privileged. When I say privileged because my father, the late Alhaji Salifu Abdurrahman, happened to be the registrar of the Bawku Traditional Council.
Okay.
And so, knowing that the issue surrounding the Bawku issue is chieftaincy, so we by and large came from Bolga directly into what? The conflict. And so, though being the Gombes and not being part of, and my father performing what a civil servant is posted to a district to go and do, or to a traditional area to go and do. But because you are working with the chiefs, and so we also became part and immersed in the conflict. Because once you are seen with, just like what happens across the world, once you are seen with any function, you are by and large part of what? The faction, that particular faction. So as kids, and that was my primary five, it took a whole lot of toll on our family, our development, who we could associate with, and where we could even move to, and where we could not even move to. And those
before you are assigned to belong to one group or the other.
Definitely. And I will say it, if you look at the history, Governor, after the time we went in 1983, what was standing in Bawku was that the chieftaincy was at the Mampusi side. Because there was a National House of Chiefs, Judicial Committee ruling in April 1983 that really showed that the chieftaincy belonged to what? The Mampusi side. Though there was in 1983 April, there wasn't a substantive one, Bawku Naba, because the person who was the Bawku Naba, was acclaimed to be the Bawku Naba, died in 1981. And there was only a regent in 1983 when we went there. And so there wasn't a substantive, but the House of Chiefs or the Bawku Traditional Council, the office was based in what? The Mampusi area, which is referred to as Natinga. And somewhere a year after that, September 1984, when PNDC law 75 was passed and promulgated, there was an instruction that the traditional House of Chiefs should move from the Mampusis to what? The Kosasa. So, Governor, you can understand. I mean, you work with some people 1 year, all of a sudden there's a law.
There's another change.
You have to work with the other side. And these are dynamics. My father being a Dagomba and working with a Mampusi or Mampusi side, it was seen as natural because of I mean, the closeness of Mampusis and what? The Gombes.
Yes.
Then after 1 year, he's been asked to go here to the Kusasi side.
Trust become an issue.
You can see trust.
Yeah.
Suspicion. Is this person coming to genuinely do the work? Is he not an ally of the Mampusis? And so you can imagine the type of situation my family was thrown in. But my father being a very professional civil servant, he had to really work himself first to gain the trust of what the Kusasis are, because he always maintained, even in his goodbye message to the Mampu, he said, I've come here, I didn't come here to support anybody, I came here as a civil servant. And so if the law brought me here and said I should work with you Today, the law is saying no, I should work. And for civil servants, wherever the law says we should go because it's the law that pays me. But carry forward. And that is the modern day, how the modern day conflict started from 1984, where skirmishes had gone. And I tell you, Governor, when we went to Bawku in 1983, it was such a beautiful place. So beautiful. I tell you, the whole of our East region, there wasn't any town as vibrant as Bawku. No. I've stayed in Bolga, and we stayed in Bolga for 9 years, from 1974 to 1983. So, and because I was staying in Bolga, Navrongo, Paga, and all those particular places were just saying that we went. And so, having to move to Bawku, we saw the difference that this was a town that was very, very business-like. And that was just because of the position. A town that, because of, it borders two, neighboring countries, Burkina Faso and Togo. And so you could go, and some of them are close as just about 8 kilometers away. It's a walking distance. And so we met a lot of it. And those days, if you were transferred to Bawku, it was like you've gotten to heaven. People wanted to take position because of the vibrancy. The town itself was very receptive to a lot of strangers.
Wow.
But conflict wasn't managed very well. The differences have not been managed very well. And I'll say that the root cause of these things is so historical.
But it all boils down to chieftaincy.
And you see, chieftaincy, and I always say the organization of the township. Governor, and your listeners should permit me, I'm not reminding people of bitterness. But the Bawku conflict is unlike the Dogomba conflict or the Danquah conflict. Though intermarriages have happened in Bawku, and it will be very difficult to find one Mamprisi person who hasn't got a Kusasi blood in him. In like manner, it will be very difficult to find a pure Kusasi man who hasn't got a Mamprisi blood in him. But Bawku itself is organized. Areas are organized based on who you support. So, for example, when you take a place like Gingandi is the area where the Bawku Nabda, the Kusasis live. And all the people who live in Gingandi are either Kusasis or they are supporters of us.
Kusasis, okay.
Natinga is the place where the Mampusis live and the palace of Mampusis live. If you live in Natinga, you are either a Mampusi or you are a supporter of Mampusi. We have other surrounding communities. You can talk about Daduri, where you can have a minister, sometimes a civil servant. You can have Kariama. Kariama is mostly where the Dogumbes could live each other are. We have Zongo, where we have the settler communities of the houses and all those particular. You have Sabongari. Sabongari, interestingly, is also a Kusasi community, predominantly. So, depending, whenever there's a conflict, if one side moves to the other side, they can burn any house and kill anybody. Because once you live in the area, then you belong to them. And that's how the conflict is so difficult to solve. Because the mixture has not happened. Though they intermarry, or intermarriage happened in the previous, but in terms of mixture, in terms of the community, the way, let's say, Tamale, yes, you can have, but when you go, we are almost mixed up. You don't find those particular mixtures in Bawku. And that has really not helped. Secondly, so the chieftaincy is the main thing, but some of the social cohesive factors should have worked to really better, what they call the measure, but it has not happened. And I'll tell you that, and I said it, looking at it and being part of it growing up, it will be very difficult, and I pray for my people in Bawku. I say my people because, Master, I went there in class 5 and left them when I was in secondary school from 3. So I'm part of them. I still have relatives. My auntie, my mother, my father's direct sister is still based in there. And whenever there's a conflict like this, currently, we have to support them with money to feed because nothing really happens. And so it affects us, all of us who are there. But I'm inspired by the interview you granted to Mark Woyongo. And because having been at the helm of it, especially for him, a former regional minister and later interior minister and active defense. So all those people, he has had it. And I know that he was being very cautious with some of those. But I tell you, and that his last words that it's only dialogue. Dialogue, I'll tell you, since 1958, there've been those engagements. There've been a lot of Opoko Afari Commission of 1958 was basically to see how they were going to work. See, maybe engage and settle.
And yes, still we don't have a solution.
It has not later okay, so. There was the Justice Olenu Commission in the 90s. It didn't work. Appeals court upon court. It has not worked.
Okay.
I think the military issue should just be there. The barracks, we should just be there.
So those are temporary measures, like you indicated. It won't get us a permanent solution.
As for these are temporal, and I'll say that they are temporal that should be permanent, because both sides are claimants to the Bawku namship or the Bawku scheme, and all of them are say that have legitimate cause to believe they are the rightful owners of what the scheme. And I want to digress a bit and say this as a point that the Mampusis you see in Bawku are not the Mampusis from Nalego Gambaga governor. This is what people don't see.
Yeah.
These Mampusis in Bawku see themselves as people who settled during Nagbe Waswa time. So it's not that they travel to Gambaga and came back to Bawku. No.
Yeah.
Because the history of the Mole de Gomba shows that when Nagbewa from Pusiga, he settled in Pusiga before the other sons dispersed. So they see themselves by and large as those who remain. The contention is when they remain, were there already people there? And those people who were there, did they have any chieftaincy?
So just like Abuba spoke to us this morning, Abuba indicates that yes, so the Mampusis will also give you a history of who have been chiefs in the Mampuru land those years or 200 years back. So, the conversation will be on.
Historical. And
all right.
History, depending on who is narrating it, they will always narrate it to favor. And
okay.
My last thing is that I want to plead with the youth, especially from both sides. Those who have had opportunity and they have migrated to